at the time of this recording, it's almost Valentine's Day, and the subject of love is one of the most covered subjects in all of our mediums, from literature to music to movies, and in video games it's been touched on. And there are some games that have, love as a mechanic. There are some actual love stories in games, dating simulators, which have a a varying degree of approval among the general population. But I think that love in video games is an interesting and largely unexplored topic in games. And I just kind of wanted to go over a couple of games that I have and have played that talk about the subjects of like love and romance and all of that type of stuff, and see how they go about covering it. I think one of the games that comes to mind for me is the Fire Emblem series. This one's probably the most notable of them, the Fire Emblem Awakening, where in the old games that you could become like BFFs with your partners on the battlefield if you made them fight beside each other in order to gain like combat benefits, right? By having them fight nearby. And in this game, they up that to the point where the characters actually got married, and once they got married, their children that they would have would then travel back in time as adults or teenagers, and then fight alongside their parents in this battle for the world and space-time, which is kind of crazy and weird. And how these characters ultimately got together was kind of hit and miss, but it's here. And it was one way that the Fire Emblem series went about dealing with romance in its games. Another one, Fire Emblem Three Houses. This one is probably the most overt in how it does it. There's a whole mini game where you're having a tea party with a particular person, and you're trying to pick conversation things that aren't necessarily romance related. Like, you're talking to Claude and you're talking about, like, I don't know, tactics on the battlefield or something, and that's supposed to make him love you more. It's very stilted in a way. And I think there's the matter of certain partners, like depending on the gender, there's certain partners you can't get with and other ones that you can. I know a lot of people were disappointed that there was no, like Claude in particular, there was no way as a male character to then connect with Claude as well. There's also weird dynamics of the fact that your character is a teacher and you're courting the students, and that's really suspect. But there's another game that deals with romance in its own way. Maybe one of the most famous games that has romance and love in it, the Mass Effect trilogy, still one of gaming's greatest triumphs of being able to tell a story across 3 different games. I don't know if these are in order. Yeah. Across 3 different games, and your decisions in the first one impact the second one, and the things that you do in the first 2 games impact the third. I know the ending was maybe not what everyone was hoping for, but still a very cool triumph in storytelling across different games. And one of the things that it had was the element of dating and romance, and you could have conversations with characters to get to know them better. I know in the second game, there's at least one option where you kind of just have a fling with a person, or you could nurture that relationship and have something a little more meaningful towards the end. I think there are a lot of people who have their favorites, their waifus and husbandos in this game. There are parts that are very mechanical in nature, or where it feels out of place. And not to say that you can't fall in love with someone while also fighting in, the apocalypse or what have you. But there are times where, yeah, it does feel kind of forced. And I think the whole idea of like, I'm trying to save the universe and also trying to see the person that I'm going to make whoopee with is kind of weird. And I do hope that they find a way of making it work a little better in future Mass Effect games, if we get another Mass Effect game. I think isn't that in the works? I don't know. Here's one that is actually a personal favorite game of mine. That is mechanically speaking, it's a puzzle game, right? It's Catherine. It's a game that is a puzzle game for the most part, where you're climbing block structures to get to the top. But also wrapped around it is a sort of dating sim sort of thing. You get caught in a love triangle. In this version, you're in a love square between three girls named Catherine. In the original, it's two girls named Catherine. What I really liked about this game is that it talks about the subject of infidelity, right? Cheating on your partner. And that is a subject that is very mature in nature, and it's not perfect at covering that subject, and it's kind of abstract in a way at how it ties that story in. But the fact that it has that as its subject, it's not really covered in games, and it talks about it in a way that is a little more mature. And you make choices on, do you stay faithful, do you not? There's varying degrees of that, and I think it's very cool in the way that it has that conversation in a weird, abstract, but also kind of direct way. This is the remaster. I haven't played this yet. I played the original on PS3. Absolutely loved it. At some point, I will come back and play this. Probably trying to explore the new storyline with Rin. So who do you like? Catherine, or Catherine? A couple more here. The early God of War games. These are, of course, some of the most legendary action video games of all time. And in retrospect, they also had some of the cringiest, singular moments where it's just like, here's Kratos and doing stuff with women, and they don't really add to the story at all. They're just kind of there, I guess, to show that he's, he gets down like that. And I am glad that they've taken that element out entirely in the new God of War. It really doesn't need it, and it felt very out of place here to begin with. And it was a different time, but I'm glad that they've moved away from that in the newer games. And a couple of other games that I think have handled it better here and there. Let's go back to the game screen here. I can't open this up or look at the profile page here, but Dream Daddy. This is one I have not played as much of this as I would like, but this is more of a text adventure game, graphic adventure game with a story about a guy who has a daughter, and he finds himself dating other guys. And it felt very genuine and talked about love and dating after losing a partner. And I really enjoyed what I'd played of this, and I thought that it handled these subjects of love and dating in a way that was a lot more mature than other games have in the past. And I would love to see more games tackle this subject more, in a more serious manner, because I do think there's an opportunity to communicate ideas and share those experiences in a way that is interactive without being weird or creepy or forced into other types of games or anything like that. There's two more I wanted to talk about. Another wildly popular game, Stardew Valley. And when I streamed this, we definitely focused our efforts on, the courtship with Haley. And I know there are a lot of people who feel very strongly about the partners in the game, or they date like all the characters in the game, or do different run throughs where you get married, divorced, and see what those arcs are. I thought it was very cool how they had those story vignettes that fleshed out the characters and gave you a better sense of who they were. And within the context of those story beats, it felt really nice, and you could kind of see the romance building, and then you can eventually have a family and all that, and the marriage, and it's great. However, the actual gameplay of how you build that relationship was largely, I'm just going to give Abigail rocks every day so she'll eat the rocks, and it's very rigid in that way. So it's not quite it doesn't fully connect the dots on how humans get together in that particular way romantically, but it is still a step in the right direction. Also worth noting that Stardew Valley allows for players of any gender to get together with a character of any other gender. So very progressive in that regard. Love to see it. And the last one I wanted to talk to, kind of the game that inspired even this conversation to begin with. Oh, two more. All right. While we're in the S section here, and this is a very abstracted way of covering it, the game Sayonara Wild Hearts is a rhythm action game where you're riding on a motorcycle and you're partaking in these really crazy actions, but at the same time it's a bigger story about love lost and finding yourself and recovering from a breakup, and it has like really fantastic music. I still listen to the soundtrack outside of the game itself, and even though it's a super short game, like an hour, it's still something I think about a lot, and kind of a cool way of exploring that subject of breakups in a way that, you know, isn't hitting you over the head with the straight up romance conversation, and it's still a fun game too. And last but not least, I think, to me, the gold standard of love, the conversation of love in video games, is a game called Florence. It has beautiful music, cool art style. It's kind of like a graphic novel playing out in front of you, and you have the ability to interact with the game in mini games that, you know, help you understand how the characters are feeling and how they're falling in love, how they're falling out of love. And it's a super short game, only half an hour long, and it's, I think, the greatest love story ever told in video games. And I would highly recommend you check it out, even if it's not necessarily your type of thing. It's a couple of dollars, pretty short run time, something to get through really quick, and something that still hits me like right here, you know, right in the heart. So yeah, there we go. Love in video games. I think I get Hades. I didn't really explore the love part of it, but it does have a romance angle in there too. I would love to see more. Yeah, Golf Story does. Golf Story does have an element of love there, you know, with your ex-wife being, well, yeah, your ex in there and all that. But again, their games have tried to incorporate elements of love and romance in them with varying degrees of success. I think in recent years we have gotten better at incorporating those elements into games, and I think that there is a lot of room to continue exploring those types of feelings and interactions that we have as human beings in games. And I think it would be ultimately healthier for us to continue exploring those spaces and telling those stories, because they are just as important as, you know, hero saves the world or stacking blocks in a well. But what do you think about love in video games? Do you like playing games that have it in there? Do you not? Is it weird? Is it cringe? Let me know in the chat or in the comments how you feel.